やれって感じだわ。
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R has me so excited. What seemed like an impossibility just a few years ago, with the original game's delisting from digital storefronts, is now a fully confirmed reality that's brimming with fan service. Every JoJo fan's got their picks for what our most desired characters are, and with there currently being at least another 10 character spots open as I'm writing this, I thought I'd try a little creative exercise. I wanted to try and decide on my picks for a new character from each of the 8 current parts of JoJo. If any of these characters end up getting revealed for the game later on, then you can come back to this video and comment something about how well or poorly this video's aged. Regardless, let's roll. Phantom Blood was easily the hardest part for me to pick a character from for this video, primarily because most of the acting relevant fighting characters are already in the game, unless you want fucking Doobie or some shit. Because of this, our options are severely limited. I was considering either Bruford or Tarkus, but since those two mainly function as a unit, I thought it would be weird to split them up. I eventually landed on Dyer as my choice of character for Phantom Blood. Dyer's a weird character since he's introduced as this stalwart companion to Jonathan with all these crazy lightning hammer attacks, only to be immediately jobbed out by Dio once the hammer actually comes down. His presence in the story overall is super minuscule. However, as far as Part 1 characters go, I think he's honestly the best choice now that Speedwagon is already in the game. His Thunder Split Attack and Thunder Cross Split Attack would both make excellent HHAs and GHAs respectively, and as a Hammond user, a lot of his potential abilities and ordinary moves are already filled out by the base skills he's capable of through using Hammond. He'd also serve to add both another Hammond user and another non-stand user to the roster, and would go a bit towards leveling the playing field in terms of character variety. I can't say I know many people who would immediately pop off for Dyer's inclusion, but as a throwaway inclusion to represent Part 1 outside of the main crew, I think he'd be perfectly harmless. Now, because I picked Dyer for Part 1, the obvious inclusion for Part 2 has gotta be Straizo, right? I mean, the two go together like bread and the people Dio's killed. And while I think that Straizo would certainly be interesting, there's a certain German cyborg who's kind of buzzsawing that idea. Rudolf von Stroheim is, without a doubt, the easiest choice for a new character in All-Star Battle R across all JoJo parts. He's already been represented in a much worse JoJo game, and his potential moveset is extremely diverse. Being a purely technology and weapon-based character in what's otherwise a very supernatural ability-heavy game would give him a huge edge in terms of character uniqueness, and his loud, boisterous, infinitely meme-worthy personality make him a character that I could easily see a lot of casual JoJo fans gravitating towards. Plus, the focus on one-on-one 3D fighting as opposed to team-based arena fighting like in Eyes of Heaven leaves so much more room for potential new moves that could be represented out of his incredibly diverse canonical kit, which would make designing a moveset for him a no-brainer. I know some people might object to his inclusion since he's literally a Nazi, and yeah, well that's not great. All-Star Battle already features a ton of truly deplorable individuals, and while I could see the argument for Stroheim's inclusion potentially glorifying an extremely dangerous group of people, they could simply just tone down that aspect in-game and hone in on its general German nationalism. I don't remember anyone really complaining when he got into Eyes of Heaven. The jury's still out as to whether or not German science is truly the best in the world, but at the very least, Stroheim is one of the best choices for the game. Stardust Crusaders is an interesting arc to choose a character from since its very villain of the week type structure causes it to have a very wide variety of potential picks with a very diverse set of skills and abilities. We've already seen 2 characters be added between Mariah and Pet Shop, and while the easy choice might be Indul due to his appearance in Eyes of Heaven, my heart belongs to another villain. Middler is a weird choice, I admit, since she never actually made a physical appearance while conscious in Part 3, and her design in the Capcom game could definitely use some modernizing. However, that's why I think she'd be neat, giving this character an updated design, incorporating elements from both her original heritage for the future look and JoJo's modern sensibilities would be legitimately cool, and I think her stand, the High Priestess, opens up a lot of fun for a potential moveset. I can imagine her being a very trapping, stage control oriented character, with a GHA that would incorporate imagery from the final stage of her fight in Stardust Crusaders. Not only that, but she'd also serve in help bridging the gap between the Capcom game and All-Star Battle, maybe enticing some of those Fightcade purists to try the game out. While I think Stardust Crusaders has plenty of potential candidates, Middler is the one that jumps out to me the most, owing primarily to the potential for breathing new life into this character. Diamond is Unbreakable is another arc that boasts a very wide lineup of potential characters, from very simple to much more non-traditional, but I think this is also another one where the overall best choice is a no-brainer. The original yandere, Yukiko Yamagishi. Yukiko is a character I'm surprised doesn't come up in conversation in regards to new Part 4 characters more often, since she's pretty much the only member of Josuke's crew that isn't featured in the original All-Star Battle. Her mechanics in Eyes of Heaven, with her stand mode functioning differently than other stand characters and her voice lines changing based on what mode she's in, could work amazingly if adapted properly to Eyes of Heaven, and her potential moveset, while maybe seeming limited at first, does have a lot of breathing room. She could be a dedicated grappler character with Love Deluxe, and could offer a very unique spin on the archetype. Yukiko was originally designed with the intent of demonstrating that anyone of any gender could be fearsome and frightening, and I think allowing this seemingly harmless schoolgirl to toss around characters like Dio and Cars would be an excellent way to convey that in gameplay. Yukiko might just be my most wanted character for the game in general, and if her interpretation in Eyes of Heaven is anything to go by, she'd be a damn interesting inclusion. Okay, Part 5. We all know the leaks, we already know that Prosciutto and Trish are already in the game, and we all know who the most commonly requested characters are. Risotto, Nero, Giacho, etc. And while those are all fine and good, you guys are forgetting a major player in Part 5's story. One who, to this day, has missed every chance to be a playable character in a proper JoJo fighting game. My main man, Leone Abbacchio. Abbacchio is a very unique case for this list, since the intention in both the original All-Star Battle and Eyes of Heaven was to include him as a playable character. He even made it into beta testing in Eyes of Heaven and has a model present in the game's story mode. However, the developers encountered difficulties making his stand functional and fun to use in a fighting game environment, and to me, that's bullshit. All-Star Battle features loads of unconventional fighting game characters, and the notion that his Moody Blues doesn't work in that environment is just silly. For my money, Abbacchio could make a very interesting counter-based character, adapting Moody Blues' recording and replaying abilities into countering opponents' attacks to record them, and then replaying them later on through the attack returning back at the opponent. Add different modifiers and qualities onto these individual counters, like how fast they are or what kind of moves they can counter, and maybe the ability to replay Abbacchio's own moves for combo extensions, and you've got yourself a character. Plus, Abbacchio is a super blunt and caustic guy in general, so it's not too far-fetched to just have him straight up punch people for his basic moves. He's canonically the strongest member of Bruno's group in terms of raw physical ability. While this would definitely be unconventional, I think it's more than possible to both design and make fun. With Trish now being in the game, Abbacchio is the only member of Bruno's gang who's not represented in a playable capacity. He's the most glaring omission in the roster to me, and while it might take some work, I'd love to see this downtrodden goth get his chance in the sun. So, most of All-Star Battle R's marketing has revolved around Stone Ocean. That makes sense, considering that the current anime part as of the game's release is Stone Ocean, but the fact that we haven't gotten a new character reveal from this part yet has been pretty noticeable. And it's not like there's not options either. Weather Report would make a super interesting character, for example, and his assets already exist thanks to Eyes of Heaven. However, I think we all know who the obvious choice is. Foo Fighters is an absolute must-include for this game. She's been a popular breakout character since the anime aired, and has always been popular amongst dedicated manga readers. Plus, unlike a lot of Part 6's other potential characters, she can actually fight. Her ability to blast bits of plankton at her opponent's gun style could serve a dual purpose in gameplay, allowing her to be both a fun zoner and to debuff opponents through the plankton invading their bodies. Plus, her ability to effectively separate herself into smaller colonies and selectively send out plankton to specific areas could lead to some really fun limited stage control. Honestly, Foof is another glaring omission on this game's roster, and one who has no reason to have been excluded from the series games for so long. With Part 6 being the focal point of the game's marketing and her newfound popularity amongst casual anime fans, I think this could finally be Foof's shot at a playable role. The True Man's World is the best minor villain fight in the series. Sorry, I had to get that off my chest. Anyways, with Diego already revealed for the game and his alternate universe self thankfully being nowhere in sight, my choice for a Part 7 character would have to be Ringo Rodigan. Admittedly, he'd be a difficult character to make work, with his only ability being rewinding time exactly 6 seconds, and his fight revolving entirely around using guns. I think with enough work, he could be a legitimately interesting zoner, with his rewinding time ability acting as both a bonus and a handicap depending on how the player uses it. They might need to alter the actual duration somewhat, since and 6 seconds is kind of huge in a fighting game, but I can imagine it working similarly to a smaller scale version of Kira's GHA. Maybe focus most of his moveset on guns, and then have his supers be relegated to time shenanigans. Also, absolutely have his GHA feature a brief silence followed by that iconic
"Welcome to the true man's world."
Too good not to do. I don't know, Ringo might be a weird choice, and his moveset would definitely be among the more complicated to design, but I just love his fight and his character too much not to include him on this list. Welcome to the true man's world. Okay, so we know Toru has to be in this game, right? The current biggest problem with All-Star Battle R is its complete neglect of up-to-date JoJolion content. Since the original game was made very early into its run, and with the arc finished now, we can definitely update some stuff. Not having Toru, the main antagonist of Part 8 in the game, would be an absolute crime. He'd be the only main antagonist not represented, and while his stand might be difficult to incorporate given its incredibly unconventional and story context-driven powers, I think it can be done. I've said this a few times in this video already, but adapting Wonder Review's calamity-inducing powers into stage control, trapping, and countering would probably allow for the most gameplay-appropriate representation of its abilities. I understand if the developers might be hesitant to include Toru, since his identity is the main crux of JoJolion's mystery, and the difficulty of adapting a stand into gameplay, but you just can't leave out a main villain, come on. Honorable mentions: Straizo again, or Santana, in Duel, Keicho, Risotto Nero, Weather Report, Oya Como Va, Rai. That's it, that's the video. I want to stress that whoever makes it into All-Star Battle R, even if all of them are Eyes of Heaven carryovers, I'm truly thankful that we're getting this game to begin with. A celebration of everything that JoJo is and has become, being presented through a remaster of the series' biggest fanservice explosion in its history. It truly is a roundabout path. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Hello friends, it is I, JoJolion, and I have an idea.